Kaufman, and May 28, 2005, at the Lowell Historical Museum. And during this interview will be Sarah Troyer, Lori Smith, and Molly Richard.
What were the red lights on?
We're recording now. Ernie Kaufman, when
That's me.
when you were here, when you were young, what was the setting of Lowell?
I can't remember when I was young.
Well, what was the setting? What were the buildings still this way? Was it as busy as it is now?
When I was young, Route Low used to be across the street. That's where they made sprayers. We didn't have no horse and buggies. We were up a little grade on that. Still had cars. But otherwise, it hasn't changed too much.
Tell us about the Indian tribe that you were talking about. What were they into?
Oh, where I live now, it used to be a campground, but where Atwood Brass is,
Oh, where'd you used to live?
in a house.
Like where in Lowell did you used to live?
On Lincoln Lake Road. But we farmed the farm on Flat River Drive.
Okay.
And my granddad used to tell me how the Indians used to come down there and camp. And they also had a campground and a racetrack where Atwood Brass is now.
What tribe was it?
I don't know. That was before my time. This ought to be good. You ought to be able to put this on a comedy hour.
What were you were talking about yesterday of how there were different creeks and the Indian burial grounds.
Yes, south of where I live now,
Which is where?
on Flat River Drive,
Okay.
there was a burial ground in there. And when they put the storm sewer in, probably 10 years ago, they dug up a bunch of bones. Storm sewer had to stop for 30 days, and the people come out from Grand Rapids and picked up the bones.
Where are the bones now?
I think they're in Grand Rapids. You cannot rebury them. It has to be Indians take care of the bones.
What were the schools like? You said there were different buildings now than before that.
Oh yeah, we used to have a school on west side, a school on the east side, and a high school.
What was school like then?
That's before my time. But I was probably in kindergarten then. I can still remember. But yeah, we've gone to bigger schools now.
And what were the teachers like?
A little more stricter then than they are now, I believe. Times have changed.
You said you were drafted when you were in the 11th grade. When you heard about Pearl Harbor, did you want to go and serve your country earlier, or
I'd have went earlier.
you would have?
A lot of kids in my grade went. They went right and signed up.
What were your feelings about Pearl Harbor then?
Back then, it was, I don't know, didn't think too much about it. I mean, it was a rotten thing to do. What is your opinion on it?
I
Yeah, but you had to read it in history book.
It's kind of like the World Trade Center, as I'd say today, but we're not talking about me. We're talking about you. Um, so you were drafted in the 11th grade, and you went to boot camp, right?
I went in November of 45 for physical, and I figured when the war was over, I wouldn't be drafted. That was a big mistake because in the 1st of April, I was in the service. I think the 2nd or 3rd week, I was in Amarillo, Texas for boot camp.
How'd you feel? I'm sorry. How'd you feel about being drafted? Were you angry?
No. You do your tour. That's what you got to do.
The war was over. Didn't you feel it was kind of like redundant?
I'd never been outside Grand Rapids, Michigan when I was that young. And this was a chance for me to get out and see the world. And I did.
So, sorry, going back to boot camp, what was that like?
Boot camp? Well, as I told you the other day, I was there probably a week. And our drill instructor asked me my serial number. I couldn't remember it. And I spent 7 days on KP.
They drilled you every day for that? They drilled you every day for that?
I learned my serial number.
Was that all it was, though, being on KP and learning your serial number?
That's all it took.
Didn't you have different, like,
Then after I was on KP for 7 days. The rest of them got, done calisthenics, marching, regular routine, boot camp.
when did you go to the Pacific?
Oh, we shipped out of Amarillo by train. We went to Biloxi, Mississippi. There was a radar school there. And from there, you volunteered. You go here, you go there. I was lucky got sent to the South Pacific.
You didn't want to be in Europe? You didn't want to be in Europe?
Made no difference to me where I had to go.
And why did you say you were lucky to go to the Pacific?
See the rest of the world.
So after Mississippi, where did you go?
After Mississippi, we went by train to San Francisco, Camp Stone. We was there 1 week. We was put onto a troop ship, 4 stacker. We shipped out of San Francisco and went to Hawaii. We were there 7 days. We unloaded 2/3 of what was on the ship.
What was on the ship?
I guess if you name it, it was there. I have no idea what they unloaded, but it took them 7 days to get it off. And from there, we went to Wake Island. That was at night. I don't know what they did there. We were only there for about, so they tell me, about 5 hours. And we shoved off from Wake Island for Guam.
Did you ever get seasick out there for so long?
Seasick?
Yeah.
Oh boy, did I get seasick. We were 7 days from Guam and run into a typhoon. There was 500 men aboard the ship, plus the crew, that's all. And it's sitting right on top of the water. I done good for 2 days. After that, me and my stomach parted. Where it went, I don't know, but it went. Then we got into Guam, a Navy base, put us aboard trucks, and we went to Northfield. And when we got there, anything made out of plywood was torn to pieces. Plywood laying all over the place. We were there probably 3 days, slept outside, ate outside, and they sent the CBs in. Started building barracks and getting the generators working again. Where they took the planes, I don't know, but pretty soon they come flying back in.
You were putting the barracks back together, right?
I helped, yeah.
So would you say you were part of the aftermath of the war, putting the country back together?
Guam is no country. It's nothing but one big rock with jungle all over it. What we were doing is trying to get a place to stay inside when it rained. It has a tendency to rain, not every afternoon, but most every afternoon. But then when the monsoon comes in, it rains every day, 24 hours a day.
Did you ever run into any of the villagers on the island?
No, I stayed away.
You heard about them though?
We were told never to monkey with the people who lived on the island. Now, when we only stayed in Northwest Field 2 months. And they loaded us all up and took us to Northfield. That's where the Air Sea Rescue Base was. That's where we had 17 with boats hung underneath them. Northwest Field was converted into B-29 base. Our base was 17s and Thunderbolt fighters. But it was hot, sticky. When it rained, they give you a poncho, you were just as wet on the inside as you was on the outside.
Were the people on the island hostile?
No. Not the ones I seen. But there's no place to go on the island. I mean, you got a Navy base, you got a Marine base, and you had an Air Force bases. And you had these little huts around through there where the natives lived. I call them natives. And the only thing they did go through was the dumps. Because we're cleaning up the bases, and boy was we dumping the good stuff over. And they were picking it out.
Did you ever see any suicides?
We were working. A bunch of us was working, I know, down on the end of one runway. I forget what we were doing. But where the runway stopped, it dropped off straight down to the beach. And we did see a man jump, and they said he was a Japanese soldier. I don't know, but we did see him jump off of it.
How long were you in Guam?
Good year.
And you went back from Guam to Saipan a lot in that period?
The only way I got to Saipan was on a B-17.
And what did you do?
We flew in, hit the runway, turned around, taxied back out, and took off again. That's another beautiful spot too. Right out in the middle of nowhere, water all around you.
They had a lot of bases on Saipan too, right? What was it like there, and what was on
I
Saipan?
couldn't tell you. I was in an airplane. We hit the runway, turn around, take off again. Never got out of the airplane.
And what was your job on the plane?
I was volunteered to check the landing wheels, make sure they were down when they come in for a landing. Everything was volunteer. You, and you.
You were in the Air Sea Rescue. When did you decide to go into that?
That was another volunteer. You were automatic into it. But I was lucky. I got into headquarters squad of the base, which was nice. I knew what was going on in the base before anybody else in the base knew what was going on.
What would be a typical day?
Typical day? Oh, you got up in the morning, I don't know, like 5, and you go to chow, and from chow you go to your job, whatever it was. I would go to headquarters. I worked in the message center, and we'd work there until 1 o'clock. And from there we'd go to chow. And then after chow, we'd go work wherever they assigned us.
What was chow? Or where was chow?
Chow? We went to the mess hall and got chow.
Oh, okay.
In the afternoon, we got assigned to different jobs. I mean, you might be over there helping the mechanics out, or you might be out there washing down an airplane, or you might be over to the motor pool helping that. And 5:30, you went back to the chow hall.
Whenever someone got rescued, did you ever help them? Like, I don't know, like a nurse, I don't know.
Oh, let's see. As far as I know, while I was there for the whole year, they only dropped 2 boats on a rescue deal. And as far as I know, everything turned out all right. I mean, I never heard any different.
What was the drop like? You weren't there, but you know about it, right?
I've seen them drop.
So what was that like?
Well, it's an 18-foot boat. It has 3 big parachutes. It has enough food and water for 10 men for 30 days.
Did you have any other offside volunteers options while you were in Guam Second Anniversary Rescue?
No, I stayed right there at the message center. That's where I work. And I only had to volunteer for a couple jobs. My job was to take the general's car back to the motor pool. Of course, I got into trouble. I forgot to take 2 stars plates off the front of it. I was always getting into trouble. Just like when we was in basic. If you was in basic and had to go on KP, you wrapped a towel around your bed. On the end of your bed, you wrapped a towel around that. Crossbar. Well, about maybe 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, you'd go out, put a couple towels on a couple other beds. And I got into trouble over that. But either that's slow or I'm fast. But otherwise, it was something else over there. I mean, I wouldn't want to have been there during the war. The Japanese had that place pretty well fortified. We used to take, that's afternoons if we didn't have to do any work, we'd go out in the jungle. They used to have what they call a breech mortar. Instead of driving the shell in one end, you put it in the back, and you closed it. It was a mortar. And you'd find one gun here. Down the line, you might find 6 or 7 palm trees cut. They look just like it. They put them together and they look just like the real thing.
You said the Japanese were very well fortified there. Like,
Sure was.
what were their bases like? You saw them.
Yeah. Remember, I got there after everything, they were cleaning it up. We got into some of the cleaning up of it, but when I first got there, we probably had 3,500 war prisoners in the camp. But we got in there and made our own runways and our own barracks. Every camp had their own electricity. The island had one water well, and they did have a leopard colony out there.
So let them try.
Isn't that where their hands kind of grow together, and big sores all over them? They did have a leopard colony down there. The Marines had a guard on the road. You couldn't go any farther than that. And on the other side of that's where the leopard colony was. Probably isn't there anymore.
Did anyone catch it at the base? Did anyone catch leprosy at the base?
No. No, you weren't allowed to go down. That thing was all off limits.
What kind of people were at the colony?
They were dark-skinned people.
Accidents?
I mean, well, you're out in the sun 24 hours a day, and all your life, your skin turns dark. And that's what they were. They were white people probably at one time, but they'd been out in the sun so long, they're dark.
Were these people from, like, what area were they from, do you think?
I imagine they come from some of these other islands around.
How long were you there all together?
I was only there a year, maybe a little more, about a year.
So, well, how long was your service? You went in and got out?
I got out in 48, after 48.
So,
When they told me I could go home, I went home. We come home, boarded ship, just as smooth as that tabletop. Not a ripple in the water. The only thing that made a ripple in the water was the porpoise. Will go along and ride the wave of the ship. Sit right there, not even move, just ride that water.
when you got home, what'd you do?
Oh, let's see, they put us in Camp Stoneman. I had to have dental work done. So I had to do guard duty. I would take 4 men in a truck and we'd pick up garbage cans. We'd go there at 6 o'clock in the morning and get these guys that are in the brig that you were assigned for. Man would come along with the truck. We'd all get in the truck and they'd go along and dump garbage cans.
You were still on base then after you were
Still on the base. And when you was on guard duty, they either give you a rifle or give you a handgun. I took the rifle because I couldn't hit nothing with a handgun. And you made sure none of them run away, because he gets away, you served his time.
one of the people in the brig?
They had little green boxes there. And I asked the sergeant, I said, what's the green boxes? He said, just wait a while and you'll see what the green boxes are. A little taller than a man, maybe about that wide. Had a hole in the front, like that, with bars. They come along with a fire hose, stick it in each hole. He says, somebody don't want to toe the line or do what they're told, he says, they go in the box. There you are, you're right out in the hot sun. That's how they woke them up every morning. You couldn't sit down, you couldn't lay down, you stood right in that little green box.
These were the people on the base.
Yeah, they were in the brig. But they were guys that didn't want to do what they were told. That's where they'd end up. And they make a believer out of you.
Are you ever sent? You ever sent to the brig?
I was like, close, very close.
So after you got back and you were back on base in the United States, how long were you there? And what did you do besides guard duty?
I was probably there at least a month. Because you couldn't get out of you couldn't get your discharge until you had your physical and all your dental work. And they weren't too fast on dental work. Yeah, I pulled guard duty just about 5 days a week. But you get a pass and get off the base. I mean, it wasn't restricted.
So what did you do after you got your discharge?
I come home and I help my folks on the farm. And I went to work for Generous Motors.
What was life like after being in the Pacific for so long?
It was nice until I got cold weather. Because it's warm over there, it's hot over there. Nice. Yeah. Went to work for General Motors day after day. And a few years later, here I am sitting.
Were you glad to finally be home?
Everybody's glad to get home. There's a little hard lights on you.
The following oral military history project is a series of documentaries in association with the Lowell area men and women who proudly served and sacrificed part of their lives to preserve the opportunities for all of us to build our businesses and raise our families under a blanket of freedom. For reservations and more information, contact the Lowell Area Historical Museum at 616-897-7688.